Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people who cover the games these days seem to hate them, or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,557 of you beautiful people watching this video here today. Now, one of the topics I've been mulling over for a while is what year is the best for gaming? I mean, 2017 was a strong year, 2018 was strong, 2023 is shaping up to be a pretty strong year, but I think the best year in gaming was actually 1998. Why is that? Well, let's find out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so to rewind a little bit, in 1998, I was 12 years old, or I turned 12 years old in March. I had a PlayStation, or I just purchased a PlayStation that year, and I had an N64 since launch. I was not a huge PC gamer, but at this time, I think more solid games came out, more franchises came out. Just all in all, if you stack up every year of games, in my opinion, 1998 is my favorite. And what's funny, doing some research for this video, I actually found even more hidden gems or lesser known titles that actually are a lot of fun that came out in 98. Now, this isn't going to be a comprehensive list. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. I don't want it to be 2 hours because there's like 40, 50 games that came out that year at least, if not more. As well as I'm trying to really focus on games that I have history with. But as we go through here, I think you'll see what I'm getting at, because 98 had a lot of bangers. And we're also going to focus on US releases. So I know a lot of games will have, especially at this era, there was a lot of games, especially RPGs, that would come out and then get a US release. So for instance, a game that came out in 98 technically is Mario Party. It came out in December 98 in Japan, but we didn't get it until February 99. And some other games like Suikoden 2 came out, but I don't think we got it till late 99, and things of that nature. So we're only talking about US releases, which also means that some games that technically came out in 97 came out for the US in 98. And the first one we're going to talk about is arguably one of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time. I really have been debating this lately, and that is Final Fantasy Tactics. So this came out in January 1998 for the United States. I believe I've talked this game to death. I love the job system. I love the storyline. I love the way the game evolves as you go into it. You can build your own squad of people and give them different job points. Unlocking the jobs is fun, except for the calculator. I still don't know how the hell that works. If you're a math wizard, good for you. But yeah, such a shame that, yeah, there are sequels to this, but it never really captured the essence of the original. I mean, one of the nice treats of doing this channel is I went and I played Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together for the Super Famicom, and then discovering that that's actually very much in the style of this game. And even till today, Triangle Strategy, yes, evokes some Final Fantasy Tactics, but there's really nothing that can handle on the king here. And this started off the year of 98. So just to show you, if you didn't realize, yeah, look at that banger. And then another banger, which basically solidified 3D Zeldas going forward, is Ocarina of Time. Also came out in 1998. Much like Mario 64 set the precedent for 3D Mario games, Ocarina of Time set the precedent for 3D action-adventure titles, and especially Zelda titles. Often emulated, never really reproduced. I still really enjoy this game until the recent Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom style of Zelda. I don't think it had ever been topped, and just a solid game that, once again, already arguably 2 games that people would say are the greatest games ever made in the same year. But it continues. So a game I just recently covered for the channel that is from Squaresoft. When Squaresoft, there's like 5 games that Squaresoft put out this year. All of them are legendary, and including Final Fantasy Tactics, which we just talked about. But another one we had is Xenogears. Man, is this a good game, and it's not even technically finished. Disc 2 is essentially a summary of what the rest of the game looks like, and then to find out there was supposed to be a 6-part series, much in the way that the Xeno Saga took off, and kind of just everything about this game, the atmosphere, the characters, the way things matter, and the mech combat, which I'm not even a huge mech guy, but the melding of the mech combat with the melding of the human combat, the more I get from the game, the more I appreciate how it played. It did drag at times, but that goes with all RPGs at some point, but all in all, a phenomenal story and something that I truly loved playing, and I'm so bummed I waited to play it because I knew it came out. I was familiar with it in 98 and I never picked it up. But yes, Xenogears, another banger. And continuing with the PlayStation bangers, we had the reason I got a PlayStation, which was Resident Evil 2. Now, I know a lot of people knew about Resident Evil. It was one of the original releases on the PlayStation, but I feel like Resident Evil 2 is the game that launched the series into the stratosphere. The fact that it had an A side and a B side for both characters, so you had 4 playthroughs out of the box, not to mention you could unlock Hunk, you could unlock Tofu, and also this was a time where you wouldn't know that. So you'd have the game for maybe 6 months and then you'd see a cheat code, or you'd see someone or one of your friends would be like, hey, did you get this or get that? And then they actually go through it and unlock it and have that extra content and not requiring a download code was so cool. And it just really brought survival horror home to a lot of people. I think Resident Evil 1 is spookier, but part of that might be because the remake on GameCube really colorized how much I love Resident Evil 1, which isn't fair because that was just such a graphically better looking game and everything. But Resident Evil 2, still the reason I bought a PlayStation all these years ago from that dang article in Game Informer. Still love it. Another 98. So here we go. I've only gone through 4 games. 4 possibly 10 out of 10 games. How can we have another one? Well, we do, because we also had one of my other favorite games of all time come out this year, Metal Gear Solid. Way to take a middling franchise that never was huge in the West and just launch it into the stratosphere. Essentially, this game really took the story elements with a combat game that wasn't an RPG and just really showed you what you could do. It's almost like a one-act play. It's so well produced and so well crafted. All the characters matter. Going through the base in real time really does feel like you're going and infiltrating, and essentially, like I always make this akin to the first Die Hard movie, because that's what it felt like. Is you have one guy on an island by himself. He has a little bit of help from Carl Winslow, and he's going through and infiltrating, and then you take out these over-the-top Arnold Schwarzenegger like Predator villains with Vulcan Raven and Psycho Mantis and all these really cool themed villains. And still to this day, I still like the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Metal Gear Solid 3 got the closest, in my opinion, to replicating the magic of the first one, but none of them come close to how much I like the first one. And unlike the Resident Evil remake, the Metal Gear remakes like Twin Snakes, I never cared much for. But God, what a good game. Another fantastic game by Squaresoft, came out in 98, Parasite Eve. So you mean to tell me they had Parasite Eve, they had freaking Xenogears, Final Fantasy Tactics. I played through this last year, had a ball, have yet to go through the Chrysler Building. It is such a unique game that almost blends a survival horror with a turn-based combat type thing. Just a lot of fun. Campiness, your cop ally is the best, and I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to checking out the second one. And if you think that Squaresoft just rested on their laurels with one of the greatest tactical RPGs, one of the greatest turn-based RPGs, one of the greatest survival horror things, and did nothing else, no, they also put out a damn shooter on the system, Einhander, also in 1998. How was Squaresoft so good? What happened? Now they're putting out games like Forspoken, but before we got this, which was incredible. Hard as nails, hard as balls. I did a Hated Gems on it years ago because at the time, and actually still at the time, I'm not great at shooters. Got through, made it to stage 4, died, but man, what a legendary run, and alone for the 1 year in 98. That might be one of the best runs by a publisher outside of Nintendo. I'm sure Nintendo had some great years too. All right, now we're moving off some of the more well-known things here, but we still got some good ones. So a game that, even though I don't enjoy it that much anymore, really did make an impact, and the series is still alive and kicking to this day. 98, Gran Turismo. Really, unfortunately, made simulation racing a lot more popular, which I might want to fault it for. But at the time, graphically, it was so impressive to look at. It was so cool to see real-life cars in a game, and then realistic damage and all that. And I think Gran Turismo 2 had better visuals, but the first one, I put in far more time in, and it's one of those things where that's all I ever did with any of that type of game, was just this game. But still, this was a hell of a year. Imagine being 12 years old and having all the games to play that I just talked about. And we're not even done yet. Now, let's switch gears and talk about Nintendo. You know what else happened to come out in 98 here in the West? A little franchise called Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red. Are you kidding me? So they've had, 20 entries now? 30 entries across everything. New Pokemon Snap, all the different re-releases, everything. And it all started here in the West in 98. I got through a Game Boy game because of this. I had never been able to get through a Game Boy game, but Pokemon Blue, I put so much time into. It made me buy Pokemon Coliseum, which I later regretted. Just a phenomenal game, phenomenal experience. Like, how does this keep going? Well, it does. There's another game, despite what people online are saying is not as popular as Croc, was Banjo-Kazooie, a game that proved that some other publisher could do it as well as Nintendo's own with Mario 64. This was 2 years after Mario 64 came out, and I can't tell you how many imitators came out, but no one really hit that mark. Yes, you had facsimiles like the Crash series. You had things like Croc. You had the other platformers, ones that failed like Bubsy 3D. But Banjo-Kazooie really introduced the collectathon aspect. Now, I actually am not that huge a fan of that because of that, but when I played it for the first time, I enjoyed it. And you'll notice that happen with myself a lot. And I don't know about you guys as you get older. You'll play a game that might introduce a concept that you really enjoy, but then once every other game starts implementing it, it starts getting tired. Like, hey, I don't mind crafting in Minecraft, but then when I'm putting Minecraft in Zelda, maybe it should stick in its own damn lane. But yes, Banjo-Kazooie, also Rare at this time, was knocking it out of the park. This was fresh off of, I think their last release before this was GoldenEye, and was a great time. Was really nice because we didn't have, especially on the N64, we didn't have another Mario 64-like experience, and that definitely scratched that itch. But Mario's handy sidekick, Yoshi, had his series officially start with Yoshi's Story. So yes, I know that you have Super Mario World Yoshi's Story on the Super Nintendo, but that was always debatably, where does that fall in? They slapped on the title for Mario World 2, but which is Yoshi's Island. But Yoshi's Story was, in my opinion, where the Yoshi series finally started. You don't have Mario in it. You get all the different colored Yoshis. Probably my favorite. I like this game. I'm not a big fan of Yoshi's Island, but I really do like this game. And yet another one, 98. Alright, so we're going to start moving through some of these faster because I don't have things to show for them. But another game that came out, Starcraft. One of Blizzard's biggest properties came out this year. Starcraft, a real-time strategy game where you play as the Zergs, the Therans, or the Marines, I believe. I don't know what forgive me, I don't know the exact. I know Zergs because they go crazy, people. But yeah, that came out this year. Another PC huge hit was Half-Life. Like Half-Life. I know Half-Life 2 is probably more popular, but once again, my argument here is that both iconic games started or franchises were birthed this year, and it's how nuts is it that it all happened in this 1 year. I mean, things like Dance Dance Revolution came out in 98. Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken 3. Yeah, Tekken 3, that also came out in 98. So another great game to play. Tenchu. If you didn't get enough in Metal Gear Solid, you had Tenchu come out, which was a ninja version of it that wasn't as good, but still pretty damn solid. A game that I really loved, Space Station Silicon Valley, came out this year, where you can control a bunch of little animals with a roving microchip. You had Wetrix, which I've spoken about before, a really fun puzzle game. Rainbow Six, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. This came out on multiple platforms. This allowed you to have a squad of 4 people, and one of the first things before SOCOM even, where you could direct your teammates to do things with you, and more or less launched the Rainbow Six franchise, which now is still going to this day with Rainbow Six Siege and all the other Rainbow Six entries. A game that was one of Nintendo's first remakes or remasters, I guess. Talk to Avalanche Jared. He's more of a stickler for this stuff. Is Link's Awakening DX. Now, I didn't pick this up in '98, but this was what I thought was the preferred way of playing Link's Awakening, at least until they made the Switch remake. A game that I discovered out of nowhere that came out in '98. No One Can Stop Mr. Domino. A really quirky, Japanese as hell, ridiculous, fun type game that's hard to even explain. A game that I waited from when the N64 was announced that I actually didn't end up picking up. It was made by Rockstar, of all people, one of their earliest games. That is Body Harvest. Essentially a game where a bunch of bugs take over the planet and you have to destroy them, and it's something I really should play. I was so hyped for that game, and I just never picked it up. I don't know why to this day. Mystical Ninja Goemon, starring Mystical Ninja. His change to N64 came on this. Another Squaresoft game. We're not done with Squaresoft, not by a long shot. Brave Fencer Musashi came out this year. Now, I have yet to play this. I know a lot of people have good things to say about it. I want to say Norm, the gaming historian, played through it or streamed it a few years ago. Another one from Square. I mean, that's 5 mega bangers. Like, all those games are really good from what I've heard. I don't think anyone hates on any of the things that came out this year from them. Mentioned Marvel vs. Capcom. I think that was the arcade release. Now, another game that came out in the arcade was Street Fighter Alpha 3. And what's funny is that I, not knowing what the Alpha series was, when this was ported to home consoles, I actually purchased this game because I thought it finally was Street Fighter 3. No, it's Alpha 3. So they managed to get 3 alphas before Street Fighter 3 had a 3. Another game that came out, I'm not a huge fan of the Crash series, but Crash 3 came out, Crash Warped. Another big mascot that came out this year, you had Spyro. Spyro came out. Another game that kind of was big and then went nowhere was the Medieval games. So the first one of that came out. You had the N64 version of F-Zero, F-Zero X. You had the start of the Star Wars Rogue Squadron series came out in '98. And then, a few games that love them or hate them. Castlevania 64 came out this year. You had Mission Impossible, which was a game trying to capitalize on that Metal Gear Solid-like espionage, which was not nearly as good, but is better than I think some people give it credit for. And outside of that, let's check. I haven't played this, but one of the most legendary console RPGs that come out was Baldur's Gate. So Baldur's Gate came out this year. You had a game called Thief come out, which I know is really big with a lot of people. A game called Unreal. So the Unreal Engine came out in 1998, which we are now on our 5th iteration of. So just to tell you, this is a hell of a year. Fallout 2 came out. Elemental Gearbolt, Thunder Force 5, Grim Fandango, Oddworld's Abe's Exodus, Quake 64, a little game called Panzer Dragoon Saga, NFL Blitz got its home ports finally, and I think that about covers it. Yeah, 1080 Snowboard, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Yeah, so wow, what a year. And technically, there's games that came out in '98, like Star Ocean Second Story, Chocobo Mystery Dungeon 2, Mario Party, like I mentioned, a game called Walkin' Rotor that I've always wanted to try. But yeah, I don't know if this is too meandering or if I, but yeah, that is my case why 1998 was a hell of a year for gaming. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you agree with me or if you think another year can stand up to this quality of games, because I can't think of a year that comes anywhere close to this. Now, I am biased because a lot of these games are on my top 10 favorite games of all time. We got Resident Evil 2, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy Tactics, and then other stuff like Ocarina of Time, which isn't my favorite Zelda by a mile, but still, like, there's a lot of fantastic games on this, and that's not even counting things like Pokemon Blue and Xenogears and whatnot. So yes, that's what you get for this week, guys. That was my meandering list of my favorite year in gaming. Let me know about your favorite year in gaming. As a reminder, I release a video every Tuesday. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel further. Thank you to everyone who's been watching. Thank you to everyone who's been subscribing. Like I said, this year has been really nice for my growth and my just health as a content creator. Getting to see all the new comments and all the new people to the channel, it really it means everything, and it's so nice. So I just want to thank every single one of you. It does not go unnoticed, and I'm just so happy to be here talking to all of you. So it's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.